How's everyone doing today? I'm Celso Garcia live from New York City from my living room. Are you ready to get engaged? Everyone knows that in 2024, Kamala Harris lost the presidency, right? She was vice president. She was very close to Joe Biden. And at any time, at a certain point when Joe Biden started to become unpopular, or he wasn't explaining the policies correctly, she could have easily went on the bully pulpit and stood her ground and spoken more prominently, right? She could have been taking on bigger roles, but sort of like you see JD Vance doing. Happy May Day, by the way. Happy Workers International Day of the Worker. How's everyone doing? My name is Celso Garcia. How's everyone doing? Thank you for joining my channel. Um, I know many times people get upset with what I have to say, my perspective on a lot of things. Um, but in 2024, if we still want to talk about it, um, there was an interview that Ken Martin, the new chair of the DNC, did, right? He ran on opening up the DNC and making it more responsive, making it more of a militant type of institution that would learn from all the wrongs that happened during Biden, right? So he said he was going to correct it, right? He said he was going to change everything. He was a reform candidate. He was going to change the DNC and make it more about winning and taking on Trump, right? And ever since then, things have changed. He no longer, he's dodging the questions. He's pretty much dodging the questions. He's not responsive to the people uh, as he had claimed that he would be, right? He's not as responsive to the people. He's pretty much um, just changed his whole tack. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't trust Democrats, don't trust um, how we do things, right? Because, I mean, technically, I'm an independent, but I believe in human rights. I believe in individual workers' rights. I believe in dignity through work, dignity in the workplace, dignity in the home, and you know, a dignified life for all people, irrespective of your race or your color. Um, uh, that everyone should be respected and treated uh, well, right? So they interviewed the Pod Johns, right? Interviewed Martin, and if you want to support the channel, the best way is through Cash App, right? And also hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button. That's another good way to support the channel, right? So, so Ken Martin is the chair of the DNC, and he gave an interview April 28th. We're gonna cover the interview and so we can understand why he refused to release the 2024 election autopsy.
Other night at the grinder party of all parties. It was amazing.
I know. I wish they hadn't run out of alcohol by the time I arrived, but that's neither here nor there. Quick bit of context for listeners. This all came about because you expressed some frustration about criticism of the DNC coming from our direction. So I appreciate you coming on to talk about it directly. I'll just say up front, we share the goal of making sure Democrats win everywhere, especially the White House in 2028. I also very much understand you've got one of the hardest jobs in politics that you took at an especially tough time for the party. But I do want to press you on some specific things because I think the stakes are too high not to. Does that sound fair?
Sounds great, John. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I want to start with the 2024 autopsy, which you call an after-action review. When you won the chairmanship in February of 25, you criticized the DNC's refusal to release their 2016 autopsy as exactly what not to do. You said, quote, was there any utility in doing that? And then promised your 2024 autopsy would be different. Your exact quote was, of course it will be released. Why did you change your mind on that?
Well, look, I mean, what I said all along, even when I ran for this position, is that we were going to focus on the things that will help us win the upcoming election, right? Making sure that we learn the right lessons that could help inform our victories. And that's what we've done. We said this when we sent out the press release back in November saying we weren't going to release the report. We were going to actually keep our focus.
Focus on the future, not dive into the past, which is the blunder that Democrats always make, right? People want to know, what can we do different? They want acknowledgement. They want you to acknowledge that you failed and that you weren't able to accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish. You said that that you were going to win the presidential election. And then in the end of the day, it was a big flop. You were creamed. And so people want to know, why were you destroyed? Why were you creamed? Why weren't you able to be victorious in the presidential election? And what strategy can be adopted to better help other candidates? And so what they did release were certain findings, but they only released it to the mega donors, as always. They only released it to the mega donors. They didn't release it to the regular people like you and me. And so it's important to listen to these people's perspective, but know that the DNC is a corporation, right? The DNC is a corporation. It doesn't really care about regular working people. That's the biggest problem, right? Today on May Day, I could say that the workers, we're pretty much on our own when it comes to speaking up for people, understanding what the challenge is, right? So how do you expect other candidates to be able to challenge the status quo if you don't want anyone to know the blunders and mistakes you made in 2024, right? It has to be kept top secret. It's under wraps, right? While the Republican Party put their strategy out there, Project 2025. They put it out there, printed it out, let everyone see it, showed it to the world, and said, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and you try to stop us, right? And a lot of people, even the DNC, didn't take it seriously. Said, that's not a big deal. Nothing's going to happen. It's just a lot of talk. they're not actually going to carry out the things that they claim they're going to carry out. And now we're in Trump's first year in the presidency, and he's tried his hardest to carry out most of the proposals in Project 2025. And the DNC still does not have an answer to Project 2025, even though they have it in their hands. They haven't come together or found a way to resist the whole Trump administration. They've just been named back, and like Hassan Piker said, their strategy is just to sit back and watch. And that's what Chuck Schumer said, right? We're going to sit back and watch them fail. We're not going to do anything. So that's why Chuck Schumer, when he had a chance to shut down the government early in Trump's presidency, in his second term, Chuck Schumer reneged and caved to the mega donors, right? The government might have still been shut down because they said, oh no, if we shut down the government, then Trump is going to be able to use emergency powers. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants. Isn't he doing whatever he wants now? Isn't he firing the workers, any workers that he wants, even if they get their jobs back later on? Isn't he carrying out a whole bunch of operations that are bad for the working people? And at the same time, the Democrats are just standing by and not fighting or resisting
on those lessons, and we release those lessons. We continue to do that. And it's important for me, instead of navel gazing and looking backwards and trying to relitigate 2024, I don't know about you, John, but I don't have a time machine. I don't think you do. No one does. So we can't change what happened in 24. The only thing we can do is actually change what happens in the future, including the 26 election cycle, 28 and beyond. That means we do need to learn the lessons. We need to make sure they help inform our decisions that we're making. And we've been releasing those. We released them just a couple months ago in our playbook, which if you want to look at that, go to dnc.org/playbook, and you can get an example of some of the lessons. We've been releasing them with our donors and with activists and party leaders. We've been talking about what those lessons are, and we've actually been putting those lessons into action. And so it's not completely accurate to say that we didn't release that. Where we're keeping our focus is on the lessons that can actually help us win.
But on this show in August, you told me this about releasing the review, quote, "We have to do it to give people who invested so much time, energy, and money a sense of what happened and why we lost."
Correct.
Especially why we lost. So what changed between August and December? I understand there are lessons, but those are not the full report. Why not release the full report? What's in the report that you wouldn't want
well, first off,
to publicize?
There's no smoking gun in the report. And I know that's what everyone's so eager to learn. The smoking gun. Guess what, John?
But if there's no smoking gun, why wouldn't you just release it then?
Because we want to keep the focus on the lessons. Because what ends up happening here is that people, of course, want to weaponize the report in a way to look backwards, to point fingers, place blame in a way that actually doesn't keep us focused on the upcoming election. But instead, the navel gazing of focusing backwards actually takes us backwards. We're 189 days from this election, John. What we don't need to be focused on is actually relitigating 2024. What we need to do is learn the lessons of 24 and the years preceding that can help us win this upcoming election. That's why we've been releasing them. That's why we've been focused in on actually putting those lessons into action. And there's nothing that I told you in August that is inaccurate. We've been sharing those lessons out with donors. We've been talking about this with party leaders and activists and others and organizations and campaigns. It's no surprise and I get it. I get why people are obsessed with it, because there's various groups and organizations and people who think there's some sort of smoking gun in there. Guess what, John? In the third closest president,
there's no smoking gun. So if there's no smoking gun, release the DNC playbook, right? Release the DNC playbook, because there's no smoking gun. There's nothing you should be worried about. Right? There's no smoking gun, so why not release it
Did you advise
and
the
let
president?
people know exactly how the Democratic Party is being run, right? But he refused to release the DNC notes, right? Refused to release it, and now he's saying, it's not important if we release it. You're just overplaying it, overstating the importance of it. Don't worry about it. Just trust us, bro. Trust us. We got you. When 2028, we'll get you. Don't worry. We're going to take care of it.
Presidential election in the last 100 years, everything mattered. There's nothing that didn't impact that election.
But why did you spend
Everything
the money going to 50 states, doing all these interviews, doing all this stuff, and doing this report in the first place, if you weren't going to release the full results of it? Like, why? I don't get why just you and some of the senior DNC people get to see it, but not most of the DNC members who are state party chairs. I mean, more than a dozen DNC members told NBC just the other week they want it released, including Congresswoman Delia Ramirez and North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton. And Anderson said, quote, "Genuinely, what did you all find that we did not?" How did you answer that question?
What we found is the things we've been telling them, both Anderson, Delia, other folks who have concerns about it. We've shared all of the lessons with them, right? And so again, I think, John, the reality is you're proving my point here, right? People are obsessed about this in a way that continues to turn them away from wanting to focus on the lessons and instead thinking that there's some sort of smoking gun in here that's going to get.
Let me tell you something. This is like saying the Epstein files, we're going to release the Epstein files, but there's nothing bad in there. So don't worry. We don't got to release the Epstein files because there's nothing bad in there, right? Trust us. We saw it. We checked it. We read it. There's nothing in the Epstein files. So you don't need to see the files because you just have to trust us because we're good people. And that's what he's saying, right? We're good people. We're trustworthy. So, bro, just trust us, right? We're good people. And this is Ken Martin, DNC chair, promised he was going to release the autopsy of 2024 and never released it and still refuses to release it. He says there's no smoking gun in there. So if there's no smoking gun, then you just release it. And I try to get the playbook, and you have to
Give
put
them
in
the
your
one
email.
single reason.
You have to accept their terms and conditions, and just for you to be able to see some lessons that you could learn, right?
That Kamala Harris lost the election, or the one single thing that we should have done differently that's going to actually help us win in the future. There is no one single thing that cost Kamala the election. There is no one single thing that we can do to help us win the upcoming.
It did. I mean, there's several things that cost her the election, but the main thing is that, can we trust you? All right? On the messaging. Can we trust you? She should have went in there and be like, yeah, there's a war in Gaza. There's a war in Ukraine. And I think the United States should withdraw and stop bombing innocent women and children. She should have spoke about the economy and said, inflation was high and prices were extremely high, and then say, you know what, Donald Trump was the cause of these numbers, and we're trying to fix it. Give me 4 more years, and I'm going to do the best I can to fix the economic downturn that a lot of you are experiencing, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, Donald Trump is going to do a bad job," but speak more about what you're going to do to make it better for every single one of the people living in every one of the cities and states across the country that decided not to turn out for her, right? So, in the end of the day, Trump won. But we want to know exactly what it says in your report. So we could know how he won, why he won, right? And what were the major factors on the Democratic side for Kamala Harris losing the presidency, not being able to win, right? We got to find out why this happened. And that's what the report is all about, the DNC autopsy. But they refuse to release it and contradict themselves.
Election. There's a number of
sounds like
lessons
Epstein
for sure
files.
that will help us win in 26 and beyond. But again, I understand what you're saying, John. We'll just have to agree to disagree on this because, we have already started to put those lessons into action. I'm proud of the results of what we've seen over the last year and a half since I've been elected. We have significant wind at our back, and we're going to continue to move forward. And we're going to continue to put those lessons we've learned into action, and I hope others will start to do the same.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, because it certainly doesn't seem like anyone's looking for one single silver bullet, because it's a 200-page report. So I feel like on a 200-page report, there's a lot of lessons for everyone to take. And if you're going to operationalize it, then I think the question is, like, are you operationalizing it on behalf of people who didn't actually get to see the report? So, like, do they know what they're agreeing to when they operationalize lessons from the report if they haven't been able to read the report?
John, you're proving the point.
What's the point?
I mean,
what point
is the obsession on the report without actually focusing in on the lessons. People believe there's some sort of magic silver bullet in there that's going to solve all of our ills at the Democratic Party. There's not.
But the first step in the recovery is admitting you have a problem, right? So they're still at the first step of a four-stage program, right? Still at the first step that you don't want to deny or disavow that you failed as a DNC, even though you weren't the chairman, but you can acknowledge that there was major failures and major decisions that caused severe problems for a lot of people, right? So what do you think about the DNC chair? You like the DNC chair? Ken Martin, he promised that he was going to reform the whole system. And instead,
I
don't think there's going to be a magic silver bullet, though. Who thinks that? No one thinks it's good. No one thinks there's a magic silver bullet. It's a 200-page report. You interviewed people in 50 states. You spent a lot of donor money on it. I think people are probably wondering, like,
we didn't spend a lot of donor money on that, and that's just inaccurate.
You spent a couple $100,000 on it, right?
No, we did not.
It was a free report.
We did not spend a couple $100,000 on that. The person and people who were involved in it were not paid to do this work. And so I would just say that's inaccurate, John. So I'm not sure where you would even get that number. And so did you have some sort of record that shows we spent any money on that?
I've seen reporting that you did spend money on it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, that's inaccurate. Okay, the person we asked to do this is an unpaid advisor to the DNC. And so I appreciate where it's coming from, John, but let's just trade in facts on this, right? The reality is we did talk to, hundreds of people. It was an exhaustive exercise to really get at what are those key lessons. And I want to be very clear. There's nothing that changed from what I said on the campaign trail to now, which is
So
we were
on the when you were on the campaign trail and you talked about definitely releasing an autopsy and criticized the DNC for not releasing an autopsy in 2016, in your mind, you thought, I'm going to do one, but only release certain lessons and not the full report?
No, what I said at the time is exactly what I've been saying now, which is we have to focus on the things that help us win future elections. We have to focus on those lessons. We have to do this exercise, by the way, of conducting this analysis so that we actually learn what happened, not just in 24, but in the years preceding that, John. And so that's where our focus is. I mean, the challenge is, think about this as an executive summary of a, like you said, a 200-page document. And I think what we've put together and what we learn, we are sharing with people so they have full insight into what we actually need to course correct on as we go into these final 189 days left and into the future.
They're sharing with people.
Are you going to release, you mentioned executive summary, are you going to release an official executive summary? Make that public?
We've been releasing that, John. That's what I've been saying to you.
Well, you said lesson. There's the Democratic playbook, the playbook that you said you can sign up for in DNC for sure. But I know that NBC News said that before Easter about a month ago, you told DNC officers on a call to expect an executive summary in short order. Officers on that call told NBC they still haven't received one. You told a North Carolina DNC member who was drafting a resolution to force the report.
So this is what they do. They're attacking and contradicting themselves and saying that they don't need to release the report. But they do need to release the DNC report because we are, in the end of the day, we are the donors, right? Right? We are the people. I thought the party belonged to us, but remember, it's a corporation, which is crazy. Right? The DNC, in the end of the day, is a corporation. But they did wrong to a lot of people. But now you have a chance to right the wrong, change the perspective of a lot of people, and allow the truth to come out, right? Allow the truth to come out. Say, you know what? We change. We're an institution that change. We're no longer going to put our thumbs on the scale. We're no longer going to just take the mega donors' opinion, but we're going to take average people's opinion into consideration. And when voters tell us we don't like 1,000-pound bombs being dropped on civilians, we don't like 1,000-pound bombs that we're paying for to be used in a genocide, we don't like that. We want leaders that are going to stand up for humanity. We want leaders that are not going to compromise on their morals. We want leaders that are going to stand up to foreign governments and not just stand up against dissidents or stand up against the people that are resistant to the ideas, right? No, we can't do that. And so now the DNC is proving once again they're inflexible. They have the mega donors in their minds and in their bodies and in their souls more than they have regular working people's perspective in their mind.
Release that a summary was forthcoming, and he backed off based on that promise. So you've been saying in coming weeks on the executive, like when can people expect an accurate
John, we've already been
summary?
sharing that with a number of folks, and we'll continue to share it with folks, including the DNC and other people. The reality is we're not hiding the ball on this. We have been sharing those things out. Happy to get you over, what we have been sharing out, John. The reality is that there's no smoking gun here. And as much as people would like to keep focusing in on those pieces, what they're ignoring is that we're sharing out the lessons. We have been incorporating those, and we have actually been putting those lessons into action, which I'm most proud of. Look, we're 189 days away from this election. You said on the top end,
189 days. So you're only worried about 2028? You're only worried about 2028? What about 2026? What about holding Trump accountable? Holding the Supreme Court accountable? Holding all the people that are destroying our economy and the system accountable, right? There's all these people that are just destroying our country. And you're worried about a future election. You're worried about everything else. But you're not worried about the average person being able to put food on the table, the average person getting victories and wins, right? You're not worried about that. You're just worried about, getting more power, getting more positions. And what? So you could do nothing? We can't even trust you to release the autopsy publicly, right? We can't even get you to go after Trump or go after the people that are empowering him. Why? You have the same donors? And then he said, we didn't pay for it. It was a volunteer. Okay. It was a volunteer on a volunteer basis. So you didn't spend no money on traveling through 50 states. You didn't spend no money. You traveled through 50 states. You had a staff. But according to you, you didn't spend no money. Right? According to you, you didn't spend any money. How does that make sense? Make it make sense, everyone. Double tap on the screen. I'm Celso Garcia. I'm live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram, Substack, and TikTok. And I'm talking about the DNC autopsy, the Ken Martin, the militant and strategically intelligent Ken Martin is breaking it down on the 2024 autopsy. A lot of people say he's just defending the mega donors, and it's not solving the major problems with the Democratic Party leadership. The major problem with the Democratic Party leadership is that many of them are bought and sold by PAC money, bought and sold by Israeli lobbyists like AIPAC, bought and sold by the war machine, bought and sold by the prison complex, right? Like special interests are controlling them. And the funny part is that the donors of the DNC, a lot of the donors are the same donors of the Trump administration, right? They're counting on these mega donors, these super rich people, to cut them a check. So they won't never resist, no matter how many times they win, They will not resist the
End of
status
this,
quo.
what you care most about is helping us to win elections. Okay, let's focus on the elections coming up, John. You know what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to focus on winning them. I feel like an autopsy on what went wrong and when we lost the popular vote in all those states in 2024, and figuring out what went wrong based on a big report is pretty important for everyone to know.
Yeah.
I've
spent my entire
know.
career, John, as you know, since 1990, winning elections up and down the ballot, both in Minnesota and across the country.
I appreciate that.
And I'm happy to talk to you about winning elections. If you want to actually talk about elections, I'm happy to talk to you about those. But again, you're proving the point that I think many folks, I think, are frustrated in this party, which is people want to turn backwards to relitigate the 2024 election. To point fingers, to place blame, to
I think you want to learn lessons, like you said.
Well, listen, to win elections, if they want to win elections, I'm happy to share what we learned in the way of the lessons on why we lost the 24 election and the years preceding that. Happy to share those. We're sharing those out with everyone. But again, this conversation doesn't help us actually win elections. All it does is continue to turn people inward. What we need to do is focus on the work we need to do in the 189 days. Learn the lessons.
Talking points, filibustering, unoriginal, and it's sad but true that these are the powers to be. This is how they believe. They believe that they're entitled to be in power. They believe that them handpicking who should run for a race without asking the voters or pushing aside anyone that's an activist, anyone that's doing work that they don't like. They just cave to the big money interest, period. And it's sad that this is the state of our country's politics, right? Bizarre. State of our country's politics are out of control.
And I'm happy to go over what those
you would think this guy's a Republican or something.
Lessons are. I'm happy to go over them with anyone who wants to talk about them, John. But what I'm not going to do is release a report that turns everyone backwards, trying to either point fingers or place blame, and actually ignore their own responsibility in helping us to fix the situation. The reality is you know, we all have a responsibility. Yourself, myself, everyone, in actually learning those lessons, focusing on the upcoming election, putting them into action so we don't repeat those same mistakes. That's what we've been focused on, John.
Oh, so Steve Shale, longtime Democratic strategist who's run Florida for the party, told the Washington Examiner that there's a, quote, financial penalty specifically tied to burying the autopsy because donors want a clearer accounting before recommitting. The DNC is entering April with negative net cash on hand. So even on your own, you know, standard of does this help us win, is it possible that the autopsy decision is actually costing you the money you need to win?
That's just inaccurate, John. And I'm sure you follow the campaign finance reports like I do. We raised $105 million in 2025, a record amount of money for the first year.
You don't have negative cash on hand right now. You don't have debt that's made a negative cash on hand.
But we do have debt, John, and that's because I took out a loan last year to make sure we could make deep investments. You know what we've been doing, John? We've raised a record amount of money, $105 million. It's the most raised for the first year chair of any DNC chair in the history of this party. And you know what's great? You know what's great about it? We raised in 2017, which is an analogous year, a year right after a presidential loss. Tom Perez raised $40 million less than what we raised this year.
Right, he didn't have the debt that you guys have.
Yes, he did. He had $76 million in debt. And so my point to you is this, John. Okay. I mean, we can trade in all of this, but let's actually trade in facts. $105 million was raised. 85 million of it came from grassroots donors, which is a record amount of grassroots donations raised in the history of the Democratic Party. That shows the energy that's out there. The average contribution is $51, by the way, John. And, you know, we raised more than any of the other committees last year. The DS, the DCCC. And I will just tell you this, all of the Republican committees raised more than the DNC. And so that's just a reality of coming out of a year when you lose the presidential election, when you're the party that's out of power. Of course, you're going to not raise as much money as the Republicans. But to suggest that we're not raising money is inaccurate. We raised $32 million. We raised $32 million in the first quarter. But what we're doing that's a little different, John, is we're spending it. We're raising it and we're spending it. Because one of the lessons we learned.
We're spending.
I thought you said you weren't spending it. So, full of crap, beholden to the mega donors, to those people that could donate to other candidates.
Spending more than you have. I mean, so you guys have 13.9 million cash on hand, right? I'm reading the report. 13.9 million cash on hand, 18.3 million in debt. So that's roughly negative $4.4 million. And I know it's a tough environment for the party out of power, but the DSCC and the DCCC and these Senate candidates have plenty of money. They're all doing great. So it seems like this is an issue unique to the DNC.
That's not accurate, John. Listen,
what part is not accurate?
The reality is we're spending money as we raise it to win elections and to build infrastructure. We have invested significant amounts of money, record investments in Virginia and New Jersey, investments in Mississippi in their state legislative races to help them flip the states, the Republican supermajority in their state legislature. Investments in the Miami mayoral race to help us win a Democratic elected mayor in the first time in 30 years. Investments in the PSC races in Georgia to help us win the first two non-federal elected races, statewide races in 20 years in their history. Investments throughout the country, up and down the ballot, and investments in infrastructure, including the largest investments ever in a 50-state party strategy, where we're making the biggest investments in building out the infrastructure of our state and local party committees. One of the lessons we learned, by the way, John, from the last election is.
So this is crazy, right? He's filibustering. He's saying they're spending money, they're getting a lot of money, and they're spending a lot of money, but they're not really doing that, right? They're not disclosing or answering the questions that the podcaster is asking. He's trying to avoid giving direct answers. And I would ask him, so what caused the election of 2024 to be lost? And he did ask that. And the answer is, it's not just one factor, it's many factors. Okay, so name the top 3 factors, right? How about you name the top 3 factors that caused Kamala Harris to lose? Considering the fact that she got $1 billion in donations, and you saw Joe Biden, you saw his age. You saw how he was speaking. You knew that it was going to be a brutal and hard for him to campaign, considering how brutal campaigning can be, and travel-wise, and doing speeches. And so if you thought he was frail, you should have just admitted it. And now that's the problem. You're displaying the same exact problem that cost you the election. The messaging, not being straightforward, not being blunt with the American people, not being transparent, not being accountable to those people that lives get affected by everything that happens.
We waited too long to spend money. In fact, the Republican Party, starting in 2020, right after Biden won that race, the Democrats.
They held on to the money. They should have spent more money. They spent $1 billion. Like, and spend $1 billion. What do you mean you took too long to spend the money? So you think the problem is money?
Democratic Party packed up the campaign infrastructure. Trump and the Republicans kept going. They kept spending money. They kept organizing. They kept communicating with voters.
All about
we
money.
did not. And as a result, they had a
According
3.5 year long
head
start and going into the 2024 election. We had 10 million Democrats who actually chose the couch instead of voting in 2024. And part of the reason
and chose the couch instead of voting. And if you would have been inspiring, double tap the screen, everyone. Double tap the screen, like the live, share the live, subscribe. So if you would have loved, you could have been inspiring. You could have led so many people, but you wanted to listen to the richest of the rich, the same ones that donate to Trump, donate to the DNC, and so don't really care what happens to the workers or the people, right? They see a 1,000-pound bomb as millions of dollars in profits they can make, billions of dollars in profits they can make. So they don't see the world the same way we see the world, right? They just see how much more money they can make, how many more zeros can they add to their bank account, how much more money can they hoard, how much more greed they can have. And so their views are never going to be the same as working people's views.
Reason why is because we weren't communicating with them early and often. What did the Democratic Party decide last year to start doing? We have our local listener program that's already engaging through year-round organizing those voters who dropped off in 2024. You have to spend money to win elections. And one of the lessons we learned.
The listener programs. What listener programs? Who's listening? Have you heard of a listening program? Or it's just a way to wet people's hands that support your party, right? And that's why people so hate the Republicans, but they also hate the Democrats even more.
If we wait. Now, look, I know you came up in a certain time and day in politics, but the old conventional wisdom, John, it doesn't fly anymore. The old conventional wisdom is that you waited to make investments until the final 3 months of the election because that's when people were paying attention. Well, guess what? That's bullshit. It's shown. We have to start early. We have to build that infrastructure. We have to flex that muscle early of having conversations with voters so that we actually position ourselves to win. Now, are you criticizing me for spending money early? Because that seems to be what the thing is. And guess what?
No, I think it's great that you're spending money early. And I think it's very important to invest in state parties. I think a 50-state strategy is extremely important. But we're talking about two different things. We're talking about spending money and raising money. And you raised $11.4 million in March. The RNC raised double that in March. And so if you're going to spend that much money, obviously you have to also raise the money too, because otherwise the difference between investment and just outrunning your costs and taking on a loan because of that doesn't seem like much of a difference to me.
It's not outrunning our costs, John, because we're able to make these investments all throughout the country, and race after race in our state party infrastructure.
But they're in the deficit, and they had to take out a loan, and the Republicans are outraising the Democrats. And they're saying they're spending early in races, but they're spending early in the races they want to spend on the people that are corporate establishment people, not the ones that have the point of views and the perspectives of most American people, right? Most American people are worried about the economy, worried about money in their homes,
in our local party
worried about inflation, worried about the bills, and they're not addressing it.
You know, if we weren't able to keep up in terms of building out this infrastructure, then there would be a problem. We've won over 90% of the elections on the ballot, and most of them, if not all of them, we had a direct involvement in. And I just say this to you, John, because, you know, it was a bet we made. And I get it. You know, again, all the folks in D.C., what they like to, they seem obsessed about, and they spend a lot of time thinking about is how much money do people have on hand versus actually what are you doing to build out the infrastructure to win? And what is the role of a political party, John? At the end of the day, our job is to build infrastructure that our candidates can tap into.
And what infrastructure have you built? That's the problem. Right? What party are you building when you're listening to people like James Carville that are willing to play a safe game? Right? Playing a safe game. And should we follow this angle? Should we follow this perspective of we don't want to step on nobody's toes? We don't want to get the donors upset. So we're not going to run a populist message. We're not going to run a message that's based on bringing back benefits and securing jobs and having people pay better, get paid better. It has to be a populist demand to run things in a way that brings the whole situation to the American people. Bring it to people's couches, bring it to people's living room. People wouldn't stay in the couch if you actually brung it to their homes and they felt impacted, like they had no choice. They had to vote. But why would they vote and support you if you're going to screw them and you're just going to do the same thing? Right? You're just going to do the same thing that was done before, that, which is workers will be hurt and you will support the mega donors and support the lobbyist groups.
To do the things that
isn't the most important job of a DNC chair to go and raise money? And obviously,
guess what? The job of the DNC
unfortunately
chair, the job of the DNC chair is singular. It's to win. And guess what I've been doing the last year and a half? Win. And guess what I did for 14 years in a very purple state? Win, John.
Right.
And I'm just telling you right now, I think you and others who continue to bet against the DNC, keep betting, because guess what? Here's the reality, John. We're winning. And we're winning because I'm.
Wow. We're winning, but Trump is whipping our butts. Right? Trump is whipping our butts all over, but yet we're winning, right? Why? Why do they have this messaging? Why do they have such horrible messaging? The Democrats can't get it together. They have some horrible messaging. How are they supposed to attract the young people that to come out and vote with this messaging? How are they going to attract the older people, the people in between, the middle class people and the middle-aged people, and tell them, hey, Democrats are on your side. We're actually going to do everything in our power to help you so you can keep more of your money and allow it to grow. Right? They don't have that. The DNC, the Democrats are right now in a mess. Right? The best way to put it is that they're a mess. They don't really want the good of the American people because they're obviously showing their true colors by giving this plain vanilla, not even fired up interview to say, screw you, the American people.
But the investments you're making are not, I mean, obviously there's a difference between off-year elections and midterm elections and what it's going to take to build the kind of infrastructure we need to win in 2028, right? I mean, I just think that that's it. You've talked a lot about investing in state parties. The headline number is $20,000 a month per state. My understanding is that also includes like the Democratic Party of Guam and the Party of the Northern Mariana Islands, who get this basically the same check as Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or North Carolina. I get that every state and territory has DNC members. Every one of them voted in the DNC election. You won. but it's also a real chunk of money that's flowing to places without federal races. And so I just wonder, if you have this much debt, is like that the right allocation of money to be giving it to state parties in Guam and Northern Mariana Islands, when, you know, Axios reported that there's also contemplating layoffs at the DNC?
There's no, again, John, you're just throwing out a bunch of garbage. We've never contemplated.
That's what the report was.
We've never contemplated layoffs at the DNC. I haven't laid anyone off since I've been a DNC chair. Okay. And so I just want to be very clear with you again and your listeners, because you're just repeating garbage, you know, pot shots at the DNC. I'm used to taking the pot shots, by the way, you know, and I think the mistake that you and others make is, you know, somehow I just don't care. I came to this job for one thing, which is to win. And if it wasn't,
so you think the state party allocation to like to Guam and everything?
All he wants to do is win, but he doesn't say how he wants to win, what is the strategy to win, how he's going to address all the big flaws in the Democratic Party, where the mega donors have an outside influence, and so he's not really telling us the 100% the truth, right?
Is worthwhile allocation of funds.
I think it is a worthwhile allocation, because when we organize everywhere, we can win anywhere. And it's important for us not to just focus on federal power at the expense of state and local power. This is where I'm challenging the conventional wisdom of all these smart people in Washington, D.C. here, which is that the only thing that matters is control of Congress and the presidency. My job is to help us win everywhere, to build power up and down the ballot throughout the country, including in our territories. And so you and I can just disagree on whether or not those are investments that are worthwhile. I believe they are worthwhile. It's important for us to actually build power for our party and our party values everywhere there's Democrats, and we're going to continue to do that. And so whether you think that's a worthwhile investment or not.
He just like talking caca right now. That's what he's doing. He just did the Donald Trump ramble. Right? He just did the Donald Trump ramble because unbelievable. The DNC refused to change. Democrats refuse to change. They think that they have a winning strategy by doing the same thing over and over again. Right? Crazy. Crazy. This is who they should be listening to. Let me show you who they should be listening to. Right? Who should they be listening to?
This is the richest country on earth, and yet, despite spending so much on healthcare, our life expectancy,
not the people like that,
we live is shorter than virtually every other major country.
This is who we should be listening to.
And you want to hear something that no one talks about, very few people talk about, is that if you are working class in America, on average, you will live 6 years shorter than if you are wealthy.
This is how you should be talking.
All right, I'm going to ask you all a question. Why is that? All right, good. You got it. All right. The answer is somebody who said that. Raise your hand. All right, you got it. All right, here's the point. The point is it's not just the working class.
It's the corporate greed, right?
Lower income people have inadequate health care. That's true. But some people do have decent health care. The issue is that when you live with stress every day, trying to figure out how you're going to pay the bills, worrying about your kids, worrying about your
This is the messaging they should be focusing on.
It takes a toll. I had a hearing a couple of years ago. It was called The Physiology of Poverty. And what the doctors up there told us is that when you are stressed, when you're struggling every day, it affects your body, it affects your heart, your cardiovascular system, it affects your mental health. All right. It is not too much to ask that in the richest country on the history of the world, that we provide a decent standard of living and decent quality health care for all of our people so that we can live long and productive lives.
This is more like it, right? More energy. And the DNC does not like Bernie Sanders to this day.
Maybe instead of dropping bombs in Iran, we should focus on how we expand our life expectancy.
Exactly. See, this is fire. This is what we should be speaking.
Now, the big money interests want to tell you we can't, somehow or another, every other major country can provide health care to all of their people at a lower cost. We can't do it. Somehow other countries can provide decent retirement benefits. All right.
Well, we can't do it.
When the former chairman of the Health Education Labor Committee, we deal with things like nursing homes. Never forget, as long as I live, I was in a meeting in Vermont. And I said, all right, tell me about nursing homes. The guy gets up there. Never forget this. He says, let me tell you something. My sister-in-law told me that if she ever again has to go into a nursing home, kill her before she goes in there. All right. That should not be taking place in America.
But that is taking place in America. So see the difference between...
We should be treating our seniors, including me, with, people who work their entire lives. You don't want to dump them into understaffed nursing homes. You don't want to not have adequate home care for them. These are our parents.
Yeah. This is the fire, right?
30, 40 years ago, workers in America, many workers, had what was called a defined benefit pension plan. You don't know what that is? What that means is you knew stock market goes up, it goes down, doesn't matter. You knew what you were going to get every month. Part of the benefits you accrued as a worker. I want every worker in America to have a decent defined benefit pension plan.
Exactly.
And when so many of our seniors are struggling economically, unable to afford the health care that they need because of the co-payments, unable to afford to heat their homes, we have got to raise Social Security benefits and expand the solvency of Social Security.
See the difference between somebody that talks like that and then somebody that talks like this? Where's the fire in this guy?
That's fine. You can take your check back if you don't believe it's a good investment, John. But let me just say this. The role of the Democratic Party is to build infrastructure everywhere so that we can win. Let me give you a couple of examples of what that infrastructure is. Our voter file and our organizing tools and our data, every candidate, whether they're running for school board or president, relies on that. We spend over $10 million a year on that, John. That's a critical piece of the infrastructure that people rely on. Without the DNC, they would have to do that on their own, all of these candidates. Our voter protection and legal infrastructure that we build. Every committee and every candidate relies on us to be out there filing lawsuits and protecting the vote. We filed over 1,000 lawsuits, which is a record number of lawsuits over the last year alone, right? Including being lead plaintiffs in many of the big lawsuits challenging Trump's executive orders. This is a piece of the infrastructure people rely on.
On that, you mentioned the voter file. Yeah. There's been a talk that a meaningful chunk of the DNC's debt traces to the committee buying the Harris campaign's voter file. Is that accurate? Did you guys buy the Harris campaign's voter file?
No.
That didn't happen?
No, you're talking about buying a fundraising list, but that's not a voter file.
The fundraising list.
Yeah.
Did you?
Of course we purchased that.
I was just wondering about the rationale for that, because it feels like the DNC and the Harris campaign were operating off largely the same data infrastructure during the campaign.
Exactly. So it's like some shady practices. Let's go back to Bernie Sanders. This is who we need to follow. People like this, right?
You know how you do that? You lift the cap on taxable income. Right now, a multi-zillionaire pays the same amount into Social Security as somebody making $180,000. Lift that cap, we increase benefits, and have Social Security solvent for 75 years.
Yeah, exactly. Fight for the people, by the people, not just for the rich. And that's when you win voters'
As Brian
respect.
mentioned, we have got to raise the minimum wage to a livable wage. Nobody who works 40 hours a week should live in poverty.
Exactly. But people do. People live in poverty in this
Here
country.
in Ohio and in Vermont and all over this country, we got a massive housing crisis.
We do.
Do you know how many people we could put?
We have a massive housing crisis. I'll be right back, everyone. So that's just a reality.
Into good-paying union jobs, building 7 million units of low-income and affordable housing,
Bernie, you got
hundreds
it,
of thousands of good-paying
But
jobs.
they ignore him. The Democrats ignore him, act like Bernie doesn't exist.
In a highly competitive global economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world.
Take his ideas and put it into place. But right now, that's how Republicans are in trouble, right? Because
Right now,
the Republicans, the gas prices are shooting up. Diesel, which is the trucks, they're paying so much more money, right? Spirit Airlines today will stop operating at 3 o'clock in the morning because the fuel costs are astronomical. They cannot, a small agency, they cannot keep up. A small airline, the first one is going bankrupt. They're going to stop operating at 3 a.m. And so this is a sign of the times, right? This is a sign of the times, and the DNC
now
cannot.
you got child care
figure it
workers
out.
making minimum wage. We need to have decent paying workers who work in child care should earn decent wages. We should have, as New York City is beginning to implement under Mamdani, free universal child care. And you know what? It is not a radical idea to say that in a competitive global economy,
Yeah, so that's
all
one
of
way
our
to
kids,
look at it.
regardless of their income, should have the right to get a higher education, either.
So this is one way to look at it. Then we go back to the autopsy and we see the way they want to look at it, the DNC, and we got to say we need a new party or we need changes because they don't understand it.
Campaign. So
You're
what did buy in the
you're
list?
confusing two things, John. Data infrastructure and fundraising lists. Those are separate things. And
But even on the fundraising list, you guys didn't work up that was additive. Their fundraising list for $6.5 million was additive to that. That was a good
we
investment.
purchased that list. And let me just say this, John, that that happens all the time. in campaigns and elections, as you know.
Oh, I know. It's just a big chunk of money. That's why I was just wondering
Well,
if that was.
but as you know, John, that happens all the time. So it's not unique to this DNC. It's not unique to prior DNC chairs. It's not unique to campaigns or elections. Frankly, campaigns and elections, campaigns at the end of an election sell their list to cover their debt. And so there's nothing new about that, John. And of course, that's one of the biggest lists and the most valuable lists out there. It's a great investment for the DNC. I'm trying to actually help us raise money so we can compete, so we can win. And that was not only a great investment, it's already paid for itself, and we're glad to be able to do that. And, we buy lists all the time. That's what people do in this business.
Pod Save America breaking news is brought to you by Act Blue. Act Blue provides Democrats up and.
So it's just bizarre, right? The way they think about the world, they just think about, the mega donors want this. They're comfortable in the office. Schools
without going deeply into debt.
I'm a Bernie bro.
Now, when
you think I'm a Bernie bro, people?
Say these things.
You think I'm a Bernie bro?
People, right wing, I get attacked for being a far left.
Is he a far left lunatic?
Commie.
We need it.
Crazy.
We need people
person.
like that.
Imagine allowing our kids to get a higher education without going deeply in debt. It's so radical, it's unthinkable. Well, to my mind, I disagree just slightly. I'll tell you what I think is radical. I think it is radical to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. I think it is radical to throw children off of SNAP programs, which
it is radical.
I think it's radical to cut funding for education and housing and other basic needs.
Exactly.
So, brothers and sisters, in this pivotal moment in American history, the future of our country, and in fact, the entire planet, depends upon what we do. And we know that throughout our history, this is Valley Forge High School, right? All right, we know, we learned about it, how incredibly courageous it was for a relatively small number of people to take on the most powerful military in the world in the 1770s. We know the struggles of the trade union movement over the years. Men and women stood up and sometimes died fighting for decent wages and working conditions.
And this is what we should be talking about. We should be talking about defending the working people, fighting for the economy that works for everyone, fighting for fairness, fundamental fairness across our society, that everyone could survive, everyone could thrive, irrespective of their race, irrespective of their gender, irrespective of how people feel about them. It should be a no-holds-barred fight for workers, fight for workers to unionize across the country, fight for workers to have decent jobs, fight for workers to have decent health care, fight for workers to have universal health care, fight for workers to have a living wage where their wages go up according to the cost of living, right? So it could be always comparable, and workers don't have to suffer at the hands of greed, right? Of greedy landlords, of greedy water companies, of greedy utility companies. We should be able to survive with the wages that we make. And instead of thriving, we are not thriving. So the DNC has to get themselves together and realize that the Republicans are under attack by Democrats. Republicans are very unpopular among Democrats. However, Republicans are very popular with Republicans. We've seen that the Donald Trump supporters support him no matter what, right? They support him no matter what you tell them. I've argued with them on TikTok. I've argued with them on different social media platforms, and they do not budge. They do not budge on their positions. They just double down and say whatever Trump does is right. So why spend our time arguing with them? Instead, we should building up the case as to why Democrats are better for the country, right? Build up the case that we're gonna lower the prices of groceries. Make people feel it by putting in candidates that are working people, that come from working people's backgrounds, not millionaires and billionaires that want to run for office, but the poor people, the working people should be the ones that represent the working people in return. We should represent each other because that's the only way we can survive. If we allow people that do not sell themselves out to defend workers. And that's why Republicans are having a meltdown right now. Because Trump promised them no wars, no new wars. He has started 8 conflicts, 1 major war, and 7 major conflicts. Altogether 8 conflicts during his tenure. And he's only been there for 1 year. Imagine that. And he broke his rule of wanting to reduce inflation, wanting to reduce costs, increasing and making it better for most workers. And it's been the opposite the whole time. So we need to adopt a Bernie message, not a Democrat, Republican message, but Bernie message. So I appreciate you all for joining me. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can hit rewind and rewatch the program as much as you want. And I appreciate you all. My name is Celso Garcia on Facebook, Twitch, X, Instagram, Substack, and TikTok. I appreciate you all for joining me. I'm going to see you tomorrow or maybe later on tonight. I'll get back on. I see you. Take care of yourself. And the DNC can go take it and shove it, right? Because they will cost us the next election too, the way they're running and the way they're doing things. They're going to screw us up again and then say, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. We know it's going to happen if you continue on the message you're on or on the trajectory that you're on right now. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. I'll see you later or maybe tomorrow. Have a good night.